Good evening, cricket fans, and welcome to SOC TV and the Spot On Hose and Fittings Clubhouse. I'm your host, Anthony Telfer, and it's an absolute pleasure to share another exciting episode where cricket is more than just a game, it's a way of life. So before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and comment to keep the conversations alive and vibrant. And the Clubhouse is a space where we celebrate the game, relive the highlights, and share stories with teammates, opponents, and also the umpies. And we do that over a cold beer or a softie. So whether you're a grassroots cricketer or an international star, there's something here for everyone. And this podcast is proudly brought to you by Spot On Hose and Fittings, specialists in hydraulic hose and fittings for the mining, manufacturing, agricultural, industrial, and construction industry. So make sure you tell Jeff and Ben Charlesworth that Telf and Walshy sent you. But as always, I'm joined tonight in the clubhouse by my great mate and Aussie broadcasting legend, Peter Walsh. Walshy, South Africa, they're now world champions. So much passion and emotion shown by the team over the last few days. And what caught my eye was they were so humble in every way. There was no arrogance in their celebrations.
No, they won the game and they won it so conclusively in the finish. And who would have thought with the Australians dominating the first day and a bit, but we were totally outplayed. And immediately we turned our attentions to what's going to be the makeup of the test team when England are here and the Ashes are up for grabs and the Poms have got an extra step in their walking and they're good and they're feeling good. But the Australians were very disappointing, let's be honest. But well played South Africa. And what it does now, it means let's hope that Steve Smith's okay with his digit. He hopes that we play him in the West Indies and we can get ourselves organised. And it'd be a good trivia question. How would we work out who was going to play in the first test for Australia now with the West Indies coming up?
Well, it'll be interesting to see if Cosier gets a gig at the top order. I think he's worth an opportunity, but there's other people banging on the door that will probably put their hand up between now and the Ashes when the Poms come out here to Australia. So we'll watch this space and obviously keep our viewers up to date with what's happening in the world of cricket for Australia. But before we get started, Walsh, I just want to acknowledge two organisations that the Spirit of Cricket have aligned with, and you're well aware of these. It's the IF project from Queensland and Clint Hoffman and the tools that he's now developing for men's health and well-being, but also Blooming Minds from WA. So you're doing it tough and you need a reset. You need to have a look at both of these organisations to realign yourself and even maybe even just giving Walshy or myself a phone call, and we're here to have a chat with you. So if you're doing it tough, Blooming Minds and also the IF project. But tonight in the Spot On Hose and Fittings Clubhouse, we're absolutely thrilled to be welcoming a very special guest, former Australian Test cricketer, Gary Cosier. Now, Gary's cricket journey is one of remarkable highs, deep challenges, and a front row seat to one of the most turbulent periods in Australian cricket history. Making his debut for Australia on Boxing Day in 1975 at the MCG, Gary made an unforgettable entrance, becoming just the 9th Australian to score a century on Test debut, and he followed that up with a magnificent 109 against the mighty West Indies. He went on to notch another brilliant 100 at, I think it was 168 against Pakistan, and he played in one of the most famous matches of all time, the Centenary Test at the MCG in 1977. Now, stick with me here. Gary's career spanned 18 Test matches, 9 one-day internationals, but just as fascinating is the era he played in. A time when the cricket world was shaken by the birth of the World Series cricket. Gary was one of only 4 players on that 1977 Ashes tour who wasn't offered a World Series contract. He's got incredible insights from that flight to England, where Rod Marsh famously created that world record for drinking beer that's been broken by Booney since. He played alongside legends like Greg and Ian Chappell, Bill Laurie at Northcote and Rod Marsh, Rodney Hogg, David Hooks, Doug Walters, Jeff Thompson, Dennis Lilly, Terry Jenner. The list goes on. He navigated through the golden era of Australian cricket, mixed with enormous off-field change. Since his playing days, Gary has built a career now helping others master the mental side of performance. As a clinical hypnotherapist and a sports psychotherapist, he now works with athletes, professionals, and everyday people to manage anxiety, build resilience, and unlock their full potential. Tonight, we're going to dive into his cricket stories, his thoughts on the modern game, his experience through that World Series cricket period, and how mastering the mind can transform performance into sport, business, and life. Gary Cosier, welcome to the clubhouse.
Thanks, Tel. Thank you very much. Appreciate the offer to join you.
Yeah, look, and I'll tell you who put me up to reaching out to you. It was Lenny Pascoe.
The Yugoslavian brain surgeon.
Yeah. I've heard that being called to him a number of times. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. But yeah, he encouraged me to reach out to you because obviously of that time that you went through World Series cricket and obviously what you're doing now in that space after life with cricket. So before we get, or let's get edition number 122 of the clubhouse started. Can you share with us your cricket journey, how it all started, and how you ended up, obviously, playing the cricket that you did?
Okay, thanks. Look, I won't bore you too much with this, but it goes back a fair way because as an 11-year-old, I went down to the Northcote Cricket Club. I had an invite from the local physiotherapist who used to fix my tennis elbow as an 11-year-old. He said, I'll get you an invite down to Northcote. And I said, okay, that's fine, because I was doing all right in local competitions and all that sort of stuff. So I went down to Northcote for the second game of the year and got in the nets. And there was another lad that was there that I used to play against in church cricket back then. There used to be a thing called church cricket.
Yeah.
And yeah, you had to go to church to play in the cricket team, you see. So anyways, so this other guy that I played against in a couple of inter-division games was a chap called Hogg. And he'd got there for the start of the year. And Hoggy was 12 and I was 11. And we were both selected in the fourths, and which was open.
We're talking Rodney Hogg here, aren't we?
We're talking Rodney Hogg, the Rodney Hogg. And
he'll be tuning in too, Gary. He's a big support. He'll be tuning in tonight.
Good, because Hoggy has. I have a lot of respect for my old mate, and we used to play against each other for 10 and 11-year-olds in the church competition, right? So anyway, so we got onto into Northcote together, and the fourths for 1 year and the fourths for another year. And I went in last for 2 years. Hoggy went in a little bit before me and bowled a little bit, but more in the nets than he ever did in a game. And then as he got older and a bit stronger, he got a bit quicker. And he got promoted to the thirds, and I was still batting last in the fourths. Second last, maybe at a pinch. And then, but they couldn't get me out, right? I played one innings where I scored 7 in 3.5 hours, including a nick flips before against St Kilda. So anyway, so there was a call for the captain of the thirds didn't have an opening batsman. So the captain of the fourth said, well, we got little Gary. They can't get him out. Why don't we give him a game? It was against Melbourne at the Overground. So I got a game in the third. I got 86. I hadn't got 86 in 2.5 years, batting last in the fourth. Right? So anyway, so when I got there, Hoggy was starting to get a bit bigger, stronger, bowling quicker. I got there with half a season. He went up into the seconds. The next year, I went up into the seconds for the last half of the year. We played together. Then he went into the first, and I was about half a year behind him. So he was in the first as a 16-year-old, and I was in the first as a 15-year-old. And so we played together for 6 years there with Bill Laurie as captain, and quite an incredible situation when you've got the Australian captain would come back for net practice in between games. Fando never actually. He always arrived early, about 3:30 or 4 o'clock, and he got the non-bowlers to bowl to him because the wickets were pretty terrible. He never faced Hoggy or anybody like that in the nets. He wanted to maintain fingers and forearms and things like that. But it it was a great upbringing for myself to open the batting with Bill as a 15-year-old. And we opened a game against Collingwood, and Fanto said, "Look, son, I've run out the best players all over the world. I might run you out today. Don't be disappointed." So we played this game against Collingwood, and I got to 42 on my first game with him. And Fanto was only 15 or maybe 20 not out. And I hit one just behind square at point. And I said to him, "Wait." And as I said, "Wait," he screamed past me saying, "Run, run, run." I was standing in the crease. Fanto ran 20 meters past the wicketkeeper, and I looked at him and I looked at everybody else and thought, "Oh, I think I better step out of my crease here and make sure I get run out." So that was our first opening experience together. It was fantastic. He got 188 and all that, as he usually did when he came back and played Northcote. So that was okay, and I got a few games for Victoria early when the rest of the world was out here in 70, 71. Victoria had Laurie, Stackpole, Sheehan, Carper, Redpath. Wasn't that easy for a young bloke to get a game then. Played a couple of games against South Australia and Western Australia. And then they came back, and then I started to stumble, a fair bit. I was a good 20 player. I'd get 20 and get out. And I found I couldn't get out of that. Didn't know why. We didn't have coaches back then, not really. Darryl Foster actually was with us, and he went to Western Australia and became one of the great coaches of Western Australia. But I was just a 20 player, and bowled a little bit when Hoggy didn't get the wickets and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And I was playing reserve grade football for Fitzroy, and I was enjoying that, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I wanted to play one game for Fitzroy first, just one game to run out with Kevin Murray and Gary Wilson and all those guys.
And how old were you at this time when this was all happening? Roughly?
I was 20.
Yeah, okay.
Just coming out of the under-19s, and I went up into the twos there for a year. Got invited back for the senior squad for the next year, and I played. Melbourne show used to be on every September, and there was something called the Rothmans Cricket Clinic back then, and Stacky worked for Rothmans, and Ray Jordan, the Victorian wicketkeeper, legendary sports coach with Richmond, he said to me, "Why don't you go to South Australia and try and get a game over there?" I said, "No, Slug, I don't want to do that." And he was a writer for the Sporting Globe that used to be around then many, many years ago. Yeah. So the next week, there was an article that said that I was going to South Australia and was looking for a club to hook up with. So then I got invited from the Prospect Cricket Club in South Australia, who you would know well. It had Sobers and Richards and all those players.
And you talk about, and I'll throw to Walshy after this question, but you talk about Prospect and playing here in South Australia, and obviously I'm in Adelaide, but Hoggy played for Prospect as well, didn't he?
Yeah. Okay. So the story is when I played a couple of games and was confident enough to talk to Ian Chappell openly, I said to him, "Mate, there's a guy in Victoria that if he comes across here, he'll be the quickest in the state, and I think you should think about it." And he said, "We'll call him up and get him here." So I called up Hoggy and said, "Hey, mate, it's and if he's listening to this, he'll verify it. Why don't you come over?" And so Hoggy came over.
Did he play one game with Adelaide before going to Prospect?
No, I think he came to Prospect and then he went to Woodville after that.
Is that what happened?
I don't think he played a game for Adelaide. I think he came straight to Prospect where I was, and then played a couple of seasons there, and then he went to Woodville for a good part of his time.
Well, here's another person that you might know that might be listening in. Jeremy Schultz, I think, played at Prospect. Do you know Jeremy?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, he's a very.
Sorry.
You've got some stories on him. Go for it.
No. I got a good. I got a lot of Prospect mates that I've been talking to recently on the Facebook and that, because I'm going to take my first trip back to South Australia for about 40 years next month. So
wonderful.
I've got a few of them, and the Walkerville football boys who I played pretty with down there.
Very good. Well, we'll have to make sure that we catch up. Walshy, I'm going to throw to you, because if we let Gary talk, we won't have any questions to ask him.
Oh, I've got plenty. Gary, it's a thrill to be able to chat with you and to have you reminisce, as you are doing. When did you, as an 11-year-old starting off, etc., when did you have that first fleeting memory or thought that you could one day play for Australia? Was there any time, or was there anybody who pushed your buttons and gave you the thought in your mind that, yeah, if you kept at your trade, there was further glory for you down the track?
That was a really good question, Peter. No, once you get in the system, as it used to be, I think probably even more so now, once you get in that system, under 13, state under 16s or whatever it is, then you get pushed into an area where people are looking at you, right? And I got in that. I think once you be picked for to play for Victoria, then obviously you get looked at, whatever that means. But then I dropped back a level when other guys were going forward. Quite a few guys were going forward where I probably, if I had been a better player then, I would have been in front of them. But that didn't happen. So I went back a little bit, and it wasn't until I went to South Australia and watched Ian Chappell bat, because he was quite a strong onside player and I was an offside player. When I watched Ian bat and was able to bat with him, then I realised that there was another whole other side to the game, and that all of a sudden that opened up. So it just happened. I don't know. I went from being an average 20 getter for Northcote to a reasonable player for South Australia the next season. Yep. And I'm not sure how that happened, Peter.
As a teenager, you're allowed to dream. You're allowed to wake up in the morning and on a Saturday morning put the whites on and head off and play cricket, etc.
Yeah.
And you can dream, and there can be moments where, I'd like to be such and such playing for Australia. Did you have favourites? You talked about your Bill Lorries and you talked about the Chappells when you were in South Australia, who incidentally, their favourite comment when they're talking about Victorians, and I've lived in both states, you can tell a Vic, but you can't tell them much. Have you heard that?
Yeah, more than once.
but when you were surrounded by these luminaries, did you find that even though they had reached the pinnacle of success, and I'm talking about Ian and Greg Chappell, were they still prepared to help you out and to realise that you needed to be helped if possible, and they could be the people to do it?
I think if you're talking about those two in particular, two different kind of characters. Ian was certainly more of a mentor for those around him. I think with the greatest respect to Greg. Greg's the greatest cricketer I've ever seen. He did unbelievable things on the cricket ground. I don't think Greg could understand sometimes how other people couldn't do what he did. Ian was more open in the dressing rooms than Greg was. They were certainly two different characters. If I had anybody, I got a lot of good advice from Terry Jenner.
All right, yeah.
In South Australia. He was one of the second season we played against the West Indies, and Michael Holding had a huge run up. I mean, even on the Adelaide Oval ground, he was running from 2/3 of the way back to the fence.
Right.
And I was waiting to go into bat, and TJ said, if I can give you a hint here, he said, just watch him run in and then put your head down, tap your bat, tap your bat, tap your bat, pick him up about 8 or 10 steps away from the wicket. And that was the greatest thing anybody had ever told me as far as facing fast bowling was concerned. Just pick them up when they're only 8 or 10 steps away. It gets all the stuff out of your head of, I wonder how quick it's going to be, I wonder what he's going to do, all that sort of stuff.
Saying scary is not a good word, but were you, when you went out there and there were a few butterflies doing backward somersaults and you realised that the West Indies had, a dressing room full of fast bowlers who like to run in quickly and deliver quickly, How did you get yourself from a concentration point of view to say, I've got to be out there, I've got to be able to give as much as I can to the batsmen that are going to be coming out to join me? What was your message? How could you get ready?
Okay, you need to get ready early. That was the other good tip the quicker they are, the earlier you get ready. I think, look, when you're playing against, as we did after World Series, and we went back and we had Holding, Roberts, Garner, Croft, Daniel, and then
Marshall.
Malcolm Marshall just coming into it. They got your attention. So you just needed to do what you knew you had to do skillfully to get inside, the bounces that were going. I mean, we didn't get hit that much, and
no helmets.
Sorry?
No helmets.
Yeah, no helmets. We didn't get hit that much because usually, well, when we watched the ball, because there were no helmets, but you didn't know that helmets were coming in then.
No.
Watch the ball go past you on the inside or the outside. You usually played a lot off the back foot in those days, because the wickets weren't quite as flat as what they are now either. So you get a lot of front foot players now, but a lot of back foot play then against the fast bowling. So you just had your own method to play against whoever you needed to play against, and you didn't have to seek to get your attention. Most of those guys got your attention pretty quickly.
Okay. One quick one from me before we go back to Telf. What were you like on the ground, maybe in the field or just as a batsman? Did you have any interaction with your opposition? Was there any sledging that went on, or what sort of a person were you?
At test level, it was clear when I got in the side. Ian Chappell had just stepped down from captain. Greg had taken over. And it was very clear at that level, not quite the same at state level, but very clear at that level. You shut up and play, and we, as in we, Lily, Marsh, the two Chappells, and probably not too many others, if there's anything to be said, we'll say it. You just play your game. Yeah, so it was pretty strict and hierarchical from that point. From that point of view, just shut up and play.
Did they have a whack at you, any of the opposition countries?
No, not very often. I used to be pretty self-critical of myself when I played. I'd call myself an idiot and I should have had that for six, you idiot, or whatever it was, or what a terrible shot that was. I got in before they did.
Okay, fair enough. Telf?
Yeah, look, I could sit here and talk all night and ask you about, telling us stories about some of the greats that you played with, but we won't. We'd miss out on lots of other things that are obviously part of your cricket journey. You mentioned you played under Ian Chappell, and that must have been an absolutely amazing experience. We've had him here in the clubhouse before as well. But winning that 75, 76 Shield for South Australia, that must have been pretty special, even though you were a Victorian.
Yeah, thanks for that. As soon as I stepped away, over the border, I wasn't. But if you talk, I think Ian in his book said that was one of the most special things that he'd ever done was to captain the side that went from last to first. And it was pretty special. Wayne Pryor had a fantastic year with the ball. Hoggy at the other end. I had a good year with the bat. Hooksy was developing at that stage and was coming on in leaps and bounds. Ian just did his Ian thing. Ashley Woodcock was the best player of fast bowling I've ever seen, I think. And of course, Mallet and Jenner. I mean, it was a fantastic team, and very special that we
I got goosebumps here just listening to the names that you're talking about that you played with in that final.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic, and it was pretty tough cricket back then,
Oh yeah.
My mate, Lenny Pascoe, he was as tough as anybody else, and he said more F words than I'd ever heard before, and without anybody throwing in other words.
Yeah, and obviously that sort of led you into playing in that centenary test as well. But before we get to that, maybe let's talk about that test debut at the MCG. Back at the Hello Ground, and obviously, a Victorian making his debut, playing for South Australia, but playing at the MCG. And to make a century on debut, but the way that you actually did that, to go in at lunch, 99 not out, to sit there for 40 minutes knowing that you're one run away, and we'll talk about the mental side of what you're doing now with brain and all of that sort of stuff. What were you thinking way back then, not knowing your career path that you're on now, and how you dealt with going from 99 to having lunch at the MCG and then coming out and getting your 100?
Yeah. Okay, I think just before that, the night before when I went into bat, because I was lucky enough to get 2 centuries against the West Indies in the lead up to that, and I thought, well, how lucky can you be? You're probably not going to get 3 in a row. And I went out to bat at 5 o'clock at night, and Andy Roberts had just taken the second new ball, so that was one challenge to get over.
Yeah.
And then when we got in at lunch. And lunch was a bit different back then. It was, how many sausage rolls you're going to eat and how much ice cream is going to be served and all that sort of stuff. I can't remember going into the lunchroom. I think I just had some ice cream there on the, in the rooms itself. And no one said too much. I think Rod Marsh, he's had a word to me. I was with him at the time out there in the middle. And Rod was great in the lead up to that. The last over, I blocked out an over from Lance Gibbs, hoping to sneak a single or something, and it didn't quite happen. And then when we came out from lunch, Andy was bowling, and I played a pretty rash shot outside the off stump. I've seen it a million times. I just didn't wait for it to come to me, and I was, I guess, a bit nervous. Then he bowled the same ball the next one, and I actually waited a little bit more, and it went for 3 or 4. I can't remember. But it was nice to come home to Melbourne, where I'd really struggled in the last couple of years of district cricket, to do something that was quite special for anybody who had the chance to do it.
Yeah. I since knowing that you were coming into the clubhouse, I actually watched that on YouTube, and I saw that flash outside off stump, and I was wanting to know what you were thinking, because you're obviously very nervous with that particular delivery first up after lunch, and then to get that same delivery again and then smack it away to get that century was pretty special.
It was because no boundary ropes 10 meters in those days either. Just thought I might throw that one in.
The batsmen have got it easy these days, that's for sure. So before we get on to the Packer, let's maybe talk about the 77, the centenary test, another special moment in your cricket journey, and to play in that game with some of the superstars that played in both teams would have been again special at the MCG.
Yeah. Okay.
Back home.
It's probably the worst game I've ever played, except so thanks for bringing it up. But I stood a short leg for 3 days and was involved in a pretty good catch at the end, which was really nice. Greg thought it was the hardest first day wicket he'd ever played on. I've heard those comments from him. I was at that stage where I'd scored before that 109 and then 168 against Pakistan at the MCG, and I thought, invincible here. Let them bowl whatever they want to bowl, So, and I was batting 3. I hadn't batted 3 before, but with the team selection, someone needed to pop up there. I'd been batting 5 or 6. So it was me. Greg was at 4. So it was me that...
Just one moment there. It sounds like the Australian selectors haven't changed the way they select their batting lineup at all.
Well, there was no discussion in it. So Greg came up and said, "You're batting 3. I thought, isn't there anybody else?" And there wasn't, but that was okay. So I was batting with Rick McCosker when he got hit in the jaw. Willis bowled after that, and I hit him for a couple of 4s over gully, and it was heightened tension. It was really, really, the vibe was quite outstanding. John Lever came in, left-hand medium fast bowler. Never trust a left-hand fast bowler that bowls with their sleeves rolled down, because you can't do that extra bend in the elbow that gives them an extra meter. So, so he bowled me a bouncer, and I tried to hook it, and it went behind square leg, and Alan Knott ran through and caught the catch. So I was out. And I guess my cricket mentor, George Murray from University High School, who was a mentor to so many cricketers and footballers that went through uni high. I saw George out the front, and I said, mate, I'm never going to do that again. Never going to. So stupid. So anyway, we bowled them out pretty quickly. We both made just either sides of 100. So I went out and I batted, and I batted for, I think, 38 minutes for 4 runs, which was a bit unusual for me. I mean, you should be able to nick 4 runs in 38 minutes or whatever, In comes John Lever, same ball, same shot, stupid, out again. And it took me a long time to get over that. And we can talk about that when we get on the other stuff later on.
Yeah.
And I was so disappointed with myself. And I went back at the start of before the last day's play, and I was watching myself at short leg, because there was a couple at short leg that I thought that I ought to have been able to get to, and I noticed that I was going down on my right knee first, which restricted how much you could move one way or the other. So given my terrible performance, although there were some other great performances in that match, I thought, if Greg puts me in there the next day, I'm just going in. I don't care if I get hit. I don't care if I get hurt. I'm just going to go in there. And as Randall made more runs and more runs and more runs, Kerry O'Keefe came on to bowl. Greg said to Kerry, have a short leg. Kerry didn't want a short leg. So Greg told me he wanted to protect the boundary line. And Greg said, no, we need a wicket. So anyway, so we go in there, and one bobbles up. If you listen to Kerry O'Keefe, he would say that I ran in from nearly fine leg to get my short leg catch. If you actually look at the catch, it's about 1 meter onto the pitch itself, so it actually wasn't too bad. So anyway, so Randall's out, and then Kerry got a bat pad to Tony Greig just after that. So I got a couple of important catches at a very, very important part of the game, but I was pretty bad. I was disappointed with the way I batted, but it was a magnificent game. Everyone was there from around the world to watch that game.
Yeah, exactly right. I remember watching it as a kid. But anyway, that's another story. Walshy, over to you for some more punching questions for Gary.
Gary, when you talk about emotions, was that the biggest emotional buzz that you had when you'd played in any form of cricket, the centenary tests?
Before the game, it was. That's for sure. I mean, the game, there's a couple of things that happened. I know you're going to talk about the Packer thing soon. Pre-game, we had our meeting up in the top floor of what was the Hilton Hotel, and then it's now the Pullman. And all of a sudden, Roddy Marsh and Lily in particular were talking about Bradman and the cricket board and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, what's that about? That's a bit strange. Yeah, anyway, and then we did our team thing. But around the cricket was all these special meetings that was going on. I mean, Percy Fender, there was the oldest cricketer alive at that stage, Freddie Truman, the Bedster brothers, Sir Donald, everybody was there, and there was a party. There was a party happening, and you had to play cricket in the middle of the party, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But when we got to the green that day, and everybody lined up, and the anthems were played, and then eventually, the Queen visited and all that sort of stuff. It was pretty special, and I think they're going to roll us out again in a couple of years in 2027, and maybe roll us around the ground again like they did a few years.
Wow.
So we'll see how that happens. Yeah.
Dennis Lilly likes telling the story as to his interaction with the Queen. How close did you get, and did you say or do anything or think about perhaps putting the hand out for a shake?
No, only Dennis. Only Dennis would do something like that. We were briefed on the protocol, but the big guy with the moustache, he didn't really care too much about protocol.
Well, when you talk about the build-up and you talk about the interaction, and we'll touch on that in a sec, but the game itself, when it was finished, what sort of getting together with the English that had taken the result to the same earlier result 100 years ago, what was it like with the two teams getting together and shaking hands?
Yeah, not too much after. Everybody was pretty, I wouldn't say flat, but it was such a big game and it finished in such an incredible way. Everybody was pretty flat after it. I mean, there was some interaction. We went into their room, and I can remember talking to Derek Underwood and Mike Brearley and to Greggy and those guys because they had some very good socializers in that team. Chris Old, I don't think Mike Hendricks played, but he was in the touring squad. They had a few good tourists there that we could relate to. Not all English teams have had that, but they did. Yeah, they were decent blokes, and Bobby Woolmer and people like that, Dennis Amos. Yeah, they were good blokes to talk to. And then, but yeah, the other thing, which I know we're going to get onto shortly, was that our guys, of course, apparently had this Packer thing going on, and I think it didn't allow for maybe the normal interaction that was going on because there was other stuff happening.
Yeah. Did you get involved as we go back to Telf now? Did you feel as if you knew enough about what was going on, or was it Secret Seven?
I knew nothing. I knew absolutely nothing. And most of the guys didn't know anything either, except that they individually had been invited. You know, they didn't know who the group was. And I'll tell you about that because Hooksy was a good mate of mine, and I was his best man at his wedding. We sat beside each other in the plane when Roddy was doing his 52 drinks. Hooksy and I were doing our own stuff up early, but we went too early and crashed before Singapore.
Let's go there now. Let's go there now, Gary, and let's talk about that flight, obviously to the UK in '77, and obviously Marshy broke or created the world beer drinking record that was later beaten by Booney. But did you sit next to Hooksy on the flight all the way over?
Yeah.
And there was, at that stage, there was no discussions about World Series cricket, and he's your best mate, your best man at his wedding.
Hooksy was my best mate, and if he was around today, he'd be one of my best mates.
Yeah,
we were pretty close, and we those little bottles that you get on the plane of gin or whatever it is. Hooksy and I went a little bit early out of the pack, and we had something like 18 each before Singapore. So once we got to Singapore, because we knew something was happening out the back, we thought, this is not a problem. And we eventually woke up somewhere outside of Amsterdam, which was about 15 hours later. And nothing was mentioned. Nothing was mentioned.
Even with all of that alcohol, you would have thought it would.
No, it was a pretty good effort. It was a pretty good effort. So when Roddy was doing all that, Hooksy and I woke up. It was just outside of Amsterdam because we stopped there, and then a short flight over to London. And that the scene out of Flying High where people are hanging out of the lockers and all that sort of stuff. It was a bit like that. And there were people that weren't all that well, and Roddy was okay, and Daggy Walters was okay. He was slightly behind Rod. Greg hadn't drunk that much. He wasn't involved in all that. He had to make a speech when we got there and all that. So it was it was a funny flight. The funniest thing was after that we went to the Waldorf Hotel where we were staying, and Greg had to do the press conference, and standing right behind him, was Rod Marsh and Dougie Walters. And they shouldn't have been there, really. It must have been better if they had been in another hotel.
So
that was very funny.
it would have been an absolute class. And look, they were all characters of Australian cricket, and you know the stories are well known right through cricket circles. So for you to be there and be a part of that flight and still not know anything about World Series cricket, when did that all come out?
Okay. All right. So when we were in New Zealand, just before we went there, Cornell and Austin Robinson turned up, and I didn't know what was going on. They were in New Zealand to have a look, and for whatever they were looking at, because the team had already been picked by then. So apparently most of it was picked during the Pakistan's series that we had just before we went to New Zealand. So Tony Gregg had a party for the Hove team. We were playing against Sussex, and he lived in Hove, so we had quite a large, a marquee and everything like that, and we were there, and we went back to the hotel at some stage that night. It was a pretty big night, and I came down the stairs with Jeff Dimmick the next morning. Went past the bar to go to the breakfast room, which was up some more stairs up that way. And in the bar was Alan McGilvray and Lenny Maddox, the manager. And I thought, well, it's a bit early, guys. It's only 8 o'clock, to be drinking something. And I said, what's going on? And he said, don't you know? I said,
Oh, dear.
Don't we know what? He said, you better go up and talk to your mates upstairs. So I went into the breakfast room upstairs, and there was one of those half-round booths. And I looked at Hooksy and I said, what's going on? He said, sorry, mate, I didn't know whether you knew or not. And then it all sort of started to unfold. But I don't think they knew what they were getting themselves into. I think there was a real belief that they could do the Packer thing and then still play cricket for Australia.
And what stage of the tour while you're in the UK did this come out? At the beginning or?
No, it was about
halfway?
Just before halfway, I reckon. And it impacted us, a fair bit. I'll give you one example where I was beside Ian Davis in the bus, and we were about to go to the Oval, Trent Bridge, I think it was, and Nottingham. They were playing in Nottingham, and Ian Chappell stepped on the bus. Now, Ian would never allow and he was in the media at that stage, and Ian would never allow any media to get onto his bus, right, if he was captain. So Ian got on, and he reached over me and he whispered something to Ian. And then he got off the bus and off he went. Then we walked into the dressing room, and I walked in the dressing room with Kim Hughes. And when we walked in, the dressing room went quiet. Everybody stopped talking. And I thought that was not so great. That was the first impact I felt from what was going on, apart from the chaos that was happening. But that was the first personal impact, that they had to, the boys had to stop talking when a few of us walked in there, and it kind of became really difficult after that.
Yep. Absolutely amazing stuff. And so when did you find out you weren't part of that World Series cricket, and what impact, and I'll ask this question then throw to Walshy, but what impact did that have on, I guess, your career and I guess the friendships at the time with the people that now are off somewhere else?
I was the only one that didn't play a test match in that series from the 16 players. I got 5 for 18 in one game in a one-dayer, and didn't get picked for the next, but I was dropped for Tomo, so you're not going to keep Tomo out and keep me in or whatever.
He can't bat though.
He can't bat. No. I didn't scare anybody when I was bowling. So I understand that, and I don't think it was a Packer thing. I know that Rod Marsh and I used to create team songs and everything, right? So Roddy and I are doing some stuff in the room one day, and then there was one game that halfway through, Greg said to me, "Look," he said, "the openers aren't doing too well. Do you want to open?" I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll give it a run." And I got 5 scores of over 50 or 60 in about 6 or 7 games. So Rod and I are doing our stuff for the team meeting, and then Greg's burst in. He didn't know I was there because I was up against wall around the corner, and he said to Rod, "You know what they've said?" He said they're saying we've picked the team along pack of lines, and he was really upset about it. And I didn't think they were anyway. It was just how they wanted the team to be picked, and that was cool. Yeah, so he was really upset about that. And for me, it meant that when it was all over, when we came back to Australia, we're playing against India. And I'd played 9 test matches. And apart from Bobby Simpson, I was the next most experienced batsman in the team, And for me, I thought, well, the boys are, Mac's getting wickets and Hooks is clearing pickets or whatever, whatever the song goes. Yeah, bugger that. I'm going to give the people something to watch as well, because I always thought that I was averaging 43 after 9 tests then. And I always thought that if I miss out once or twice, I'm going to get back and I'll get 100 here. That won't be a problem. And but I never did. I got out of that flow of remembering how I scored runs, trying to compete about what was happening down the road. Now, I don't know what that means. That might be just a cop out. But I know for me that I felt that we had to give the people something that were coming to watch us. They're the second team now. The other Australian team was down the road, and we had a bunch of new guys. And I thought I had to try and compete with some of that, whether that really affected me or not. But the next 9 tests, I averaged 15. In Australia, West Indies, all that sort of stuff. And so it probably impacted me. I would have loved to keep playing with Greg Chappell, Dougie Walters, and with all due respect to my other mates, those guys, and batting 5 or 6. I reckon I could have done that for another couple of years, and probably it kept going on the path that I was going. But so that's how it probably affected me personally.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to throw to Walshy. I know he wants to talk about that period and maybe the influence of Bradman and that conflict between Bradman and Packer maybe, and ACB and Walshy.
Well, Gary, when you talk about 2 separate teams, you've got Come On Aussie, Come On. Every time you turn Channel 9 on, it was the bus boys and they were rocking away. And those that were playing for Kerry Packer, they were spread far and wide. They didn't play on all of the major league grounds or the major cricket grounds, but they took a different style and a different form of entertainment to a crowd that might have been seeking that. And I just wonder, how did you and how did those that were still in the Australian team and the new kids on the block were being plucked from obscurity and were playing, was there still a genuine feeling of friendship between the 2 camps?
No, I can honestly say I don't think there was. It impacted greatly on relationships at that time, and you saw what happened to Kim Hughes when they came back. I I endured another impact on my career when Greg came back to Queensland. Everything was, and I never had an argument with Greg in my life, but things were a little bit tense for if I was his vice captain. Probably things weren't as easy as they could have been, although we had great respect, I think, for each other and all that sort of stuff. But Greg went through a hard time in Queensland. He couldn't cross the street in front of some people without them having a go at him for leaving Queensland cricket and all that sort of stuff. So it was really, really ingrained in those 2 cultures, and then the cultures in each one of the cities that people came from. It was really, really. I hope Australian sport never goes through it again to this level, and of course, it all played out with Kim, how Kim was treated by those who were his mates before World Series cricket happened. He found it really difficult, and I don't think they made it too easy for him.
Gary, do you think that those wounds healed, or some of them did and some didn't?
Oh, I think it still resonates with a few people. I think Kim may be one of them. I think it had a big impact on him personally. Most of the other guys, I think, are probably okay, but we lost a lot of good cricketers during that time. Peter Toohey was a wonderful cricketer, a magnificent fielder, a gutsy middle order batsman. Craig Sargent was a good player who hadn't quite developed there, but he would have developed. Hooksy, Hooksy didn't quite get to the level in Test cricket. I think he and I averaged like one run between us in our averages. He didn't suffer from it. He probably had an advantage through it, but he came into tumultuous period after World Series cricket. So that time that went on for 2 or 3 years after. On the playing field probably lasted for a lot longer when people got home and started to think about their cricket journey.
How do you think Australian cricket fans, and there's a lot of them, and I'm using myself and Telf as 2 examples, how do you think we look back on that era where we saw entertainment? There's no question about that at all, with the players in their coloured gear that were playing for Australia, and then the other countries who came out and played as well. Do you think that there's going to be that feeling of, yep, that was good, we enjoyed that, it was different?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have no problem with that. It's like I love 2020 cricket. Most of my age don't like it. I think it's fantastic. I think 50 over cricket's as boring as hell, but I think 2020 is fantastic. So no, I think that people would think, that was the birth of modern cricket. Birth of modern cricket actually happened in the late 60s, early 70s, when Ian Chappell and crew took over from probably the Laurie Simpson era, which was a follow on from the Benno Hassett era. A little bit different, but not too much. But when the Chappells took over and Rod Marsh took over, things happened. It was a big difference. The rest was built on that, but most people won't either remember or understand that previous 10-year period, I don't think.
Yeah, and on our way back to Telf, what, Gary, you get about, because you are a professional person of high repute with what you do in your life, does the comment about World Series cricket and about the fracturing that took place, does that come up at all? Do you get questions like we're throwing at you tonight?
If I do a speaking engagement, sometimes that will come up, depending on the age group.
If it's a younger age group, they don't even know what you're talking about, probably.
No, they don't even know any of that stuff ever happened. Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing tonight we've got our demographics are over 40, so they know who you are, and they even know who Walshy is, and he's a lot older than all of us. Just a quick one on before we tick that box of World Series cricket. That period of time, and obviously it was a tumultuous time in Australian cricket and world cricket for that matter. But was that period, in your opinion, Gary, was it about the player rights and money, or was it just money? Or was it entertainment? Or was it a combination of all three, understanding the man that was making all the moves at the top in Kerry Packer?
Yeah, okay. When we went to New Zealand, we just signed a new deal on behalf of Australian cricketers for the next 10 years, I think, that increased our payments a lot. I think it used to be 200 a test match, and we went to 400 or 500 a test match superannuation. That was a superannuation payment. And then I don't know, we probably got $300 a test match back then, or whatever it was. I can't remember. But anyway, it was an improvement from where we were. But the biggest thing, you had to be selected to, there was no squad or anything like that. Nothing guaranteed, right? Mm-hmm. And that wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but that's just the way it was.
Yeah.
So I think this was about money. I've played a lot of golf with Rod Laver, which is a great life pleasure of mine. And he talked me through how the professional tennis came about with him and Pancho Gonzalez, particularly getting most of the crowds together to fund the rest of the tour, sort of thing. And then is a bit the same where Dennis and Rod and Ian and Greg, and I don't know in what order, said, well, you know, people are coming to watch us play cricket and play good cricket, and yet we're only getting such a small share of the revenue. And I think that was the driver, because these guys were going to play attractive cricket anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, if we didn't get 300 in a day, yeah, we can't believe how you couldn't get 300 in a day. You know, it was usually 320, 350 in a day. It's just the way on larger grounds with no in boundaries. Just the way it happened. So we were already playing pretty good cricket. So that would have happened whatever colour uniform you're wearing or however they're going to pay you. But I think from an outsider looking in and being involved in a few of the conversations and talking to guys now, it was a revenue thing, and rightly so. I don't think that anybody has a problem with that, particularly when you compare them to what AFL guys are getting now and whatever.
So those guys are all being paid a lot of money. You're back in the establishment, playing under the ACB banner, and Bradman's still around then, controlling the cricket at that stage, was he? Or
yeah, but Bradman, you never saw him much. Even in South Australia, you didn't see Sir Donald very much. He'd walk past the dressing rooms and say, "Hello, boys." And really, apart from giving Greg Chappell a hint on how to change his grip on the bat, I don't know, and I could be very wrong here. So I apologise to all my South Australian listeners that I don't think he gave too much advice to too many people, certainly when I was there in any formal context.
You're a Victorian though, living in South Australia.
Yeah.
I'm like you. I'm a Mildura Victorian boy and now living in South Australia. So
there you go.
I get what you're putting down. Look, I don't think we need to keep talking about that period. We know that it was a tumultuous period. I want to focus on the current game at the moment, and we talked about the selectors taking players from batting in the middle order and making them openers. That happened to you. What are your opinions on where the Australian team's going at the moment? And we saw a disastrous World Test Championship.
Oh, I'm sorry.
result.
I've just had something come across my. I've got Anne Murray playing in the background. I don't know where Anne came from. I like Anne Murray actually, but hang on. I don't know what's happened there. Oh.
No, that's okay. It's live. It's live on.
As long
YouTube,
as you can't hear it, that's all right. I'll just sing along with her, and you'll get the gist. Okay, so cricket these days.
Yeah.
Struggling.
Just quickly.
Struggling technically with quite a few of the players. I think we forget how good Davey Warner really was because we're losing the ability to take the game on successfully in that position. I love how Webster plays. I think he's a really, really good player. Right now, I think he's a more natural player than what Green is. Not that he might not progress, but I'm not quite sure if he's a top order player. The bowling, I think our bowling's pretty good. I'm not sure if it's as good as we think it is, actually.
No, I think you might be right there.
We put big raps on our bowlers, but I'm not quite sure if they are as good as as we think they are. When it's all going well, we're really good. We struggle a lot of the time. So anyway, so that's for other people to think about. I think they'll play Cosier in the West Indies. I think the wickets will be perfect for him over there. But I think it might be harder in the West Indies than we think it's going to be, and England is going to be really tough, I think.
Yeah. Very well said. Walshy, I'm going to throw a question to you, and then I want to come back and talk to Gary about what he's now currently doing after cricket with his hypnotherapy and psychotherapy.
Okay.
Gary, if you had to pick out a couple of players that you'd go and watch, I'm not talking about Australians, or I'm not talking about what happened with South Africa to win the World Championship, who would be your favourite players now in the Test cricket arena that you'd like to go and see? I'll go for a batsman, and then I'll go for a bowler from you. Who would you like to go and watch?
Yeah, good question. I'd like to see Pat Cummins up closer than I've seen him, just to see how he plays his game as a bowler. I've only seen him on TV, and I'll just throw in another one. I think that Boomerang is just an absolute handful for anybody that that plays against him. Well, I mean, what a wonderful player, and it throws all the coaching out the window, doesn't he? Really?
He does. Well, you've given us some quickies. Now, what about spinners or a batsman?
Gee whiz. I'm going to go for an all-rounder. Actually, if I can do that, I'm going to go for Ben Stokes.
Oh, all right.
I think he has this incredible ability to come good when he needs to come good. I think he has some internal driver within him that appears to get into other places when he needs to get to those special places. And I think he's a really interesting character and a great all-rounder, and they're so lucky to have him after losing Freddie Flintoff and have Stokes to stand up. So I'd like to go and have a look at him have a good bat.
Yeah, fair call. On our way back to Telf. Sorry, Telf.
No, I was just going to say, it's funny how the Poms went, Botham, Flintoff, Stokes.
Yeah. I mean, gee whiz.
Buggers.
I mean, how lucky to be to have something like that, you know.
True.
Anyway.
The last one from me, Gary, is do you have time when, and I know you've got so much activity as a professional person, but to just bulk erase or to stick your head in a bulk eraser and get rid of all the things that you don't want in your life? You just want to be able to wander around and have some Gary Cosier time.
What I do now is my Gary Cosier time.
Really?
It is it's taken me a long time to reach where I am now, and I'm so happy that I've found this thing later on in my life.
Well, tell us what it is. Tell us that those who don't know.
Oh,
I'm a clinical
hypnotherapist and a psychotherapist. So I deal with people with all kinds of problems in their lives, whether it be depression, PTSD, just feeling stuck. And so many people just feel, stuck with what their life is giving them right now, and working out another way for them to look at things and reconnect with themselves. Most people who are stuck forgot all the strengths that they already have, and they've lost contact with that. So once you put them in touch with all the good things that they've experienced in their life and all the strengths that they've got, and then let those strengths and things shine through into their problems now, and let them learn some lessons, and then shine a bit of a light on the future for them, then that's a pretty good thing to do. I love doing.
Yeah, it's a very honest answer. Well, I'll just check my TAB phone account and hand back now to Telf, who can continue on now with what are your problems in your life, Telf?
We've only got a few minutes.
That's okay. Very, very quickly then, because we have been going an hour with Gary, and I've got so much more I would like to talk about. But could you just quickly maybe explain how sports hypnosis works and how to quieten, I guess, that white noise and prepare athletes mentally?
Yeah, sure. Okay. One, it's all about finding a quiet space in your head. I know if, for example, if I was having trouble with bouncers or playing bouncers when I shouldn't have, if I had been working with a person, you can slow it down in their mind, rehearse it in their mind, let them see the ball coming towards them, let them feel calm about that, let them feel what their options are as the ball is approaching them, and give them the opportunity to duck here or duck there or play their shot, but let them feel much calmer about that situation than when they do when the ball is running in. I've worked with amateur golfers, some of the top amateur golfers in Australia, and one girl in particular who came to me 3 days before the national a competition up here in Brizzy. She said, I've just played RQ. I played it terribly. The last 3 holes were awful. I'm captain of the team. I said, okay, let's come into the room and let's go and play those 3 holes while you're sitting in the chair. So we went through her anxieties about each one of the holes, how she felt, what she was looking at, she was thinking about, and we let her rejiggle that and find a quiet space for herself, leave her anxieties by the bag, and don't step into a magic circle around the ball until she'd done that. When hitting the ball, don't look at the result, but feel interested about the contact that she makes. Look at the flight of the ball. So not looking at the end result, but just looking at the process of actually hitting the ball. So leaving the anxieties away, not being ready to perform until you've been able to do that, leave them over there, step into that magic circle, if you like, and then play your shot. So that's the kind of thing that that I work with sports people,
and you're obviously working not just with sports people, but everyday people and people that are in business. I guess these are transferable as mental skills for business, leadership, everyday life.
Absolutely. I do some consultancy work for a company called Grey Matter Solutions, which is executive coaching. So I tend to deal with executives who are a little bit lost in that space, and I've got clients all around the world that I deal with large companies like Airbus and other people that that we deal with. People who are just stuck in their jobs, lost direction, maybe projecting themselves in front of other people in ways that they feel are derogatory to their career and to themselves. So I do a lot of work in that coaching space as well.
And one last question just on this, because as I said, we're going to go for 45 minutes or an hour, and we're well over an hour. So Gary, I first of all just thank you so much for your time. But what key advice would you give to anyone that's looking to build a stronger mental resilience and deal with anxiety in sport, work or life?
Biggest problem we all have is just to sit in the middle of everything. While the world is being chaotic around you, we often feel we have to run to one side or run to the other, to have an opinion, to do something. When we can sit quietly and just be happy with ourselves as we are, once you can have that building block of just personal contentment, then the rest of the stuff is not so important.
Yeah. Very, very clear and concise. Walshy, one last question, then we'll let Gary go, and then we can also go and have some dinner as well. Is that okay, Gary?
Sorry?
Is that okay?
Yeah, mate, that's fine. Well, good.
Beautiful. Thank you.
It's been fascinating, Gary. Given the knowledge that you have as when you had a bat in hand and when you were fielding a short forward square leg when the centenary test was about to finish, you've given us all your honesty and you've bounced out and done beautifully, and it's been really good. And I just ask one question of you now, a short one, but the health of cricket around the world. I had a crack the last week in this program, and I said I was disappointed that the World Grand Final of cricket, I call it, was played at Lords. Nothing to do with Lords, but Australia played and South Africa played. I would have loved to have seen it at the MCG or loved to have seen it somewhere in South Africa. I just wonder, are we still okay with cricket on a global scale?
Good question. I think we're okay. Not sure if we're very good. I think we're okay. And how that pans out the next 10 years, I don't know whether it's all about money, you know that. It's all about media and money. And whether media and money means we're okay, I think okay is maybe the best we can do.
Okay. I said okay. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yes, we're okay, but we're not great. I don't think we're great. I think we're just okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that's a perfect way to finish. And because it's okay and we are in the media, we have to thank our sponsors, Gary. So,
yes, of course you
do. You watch Walshy now go to town here. He does it so well. He's been practicing all week to do this.
Thank you, Tel. From manufacturing to delivery, wherever you are in Australia, there's only one name that you desperately need to know. Spot On Hose and Fittings, based in Wollongong, now with new offices in Newcastle. Spot On is your go-to team for hydraulic hoses, fittings, adapters, valves and connectors, with delivery available Australia-wide and around the world. If you want to make contact with Gary, he'll give you my email address and I'm happy to make contact at any time. Going rates are very good. Here's the best part. They've got on-site testing facilities, so you know you're getting the highest quality every time. For the mining, manufacturing, agriculture, industrial or construction industries, Spot On is the team to see. Tell Jeff and Ben Charlesworth that Telf and Walshy sent you. Get it spot on every time. Spot On hose and fittings, keeping Australia connected, one fitting at a time. I hope that fits you, Telf.
Well done, Walshy. Hey, Gary, if someone has been listening to you tonight and obviously caught the last part of this night, how do they get in contact with you to maybe engage with you?
Okay, well, thank you for giving me that opportunity. My website is ahappierlife.com.au and www, where my phone number is on that, or you can find me on WhatsApp, and I don't do too much Facebook stuff.
No, wonderful stuff. I think you've got about 3 or 4 profiles on Facebook, and I tried to get you there and there was nothing much happening. So yeah. I know you don't do Facebook, but look, I just want to say thank you so much, Gary, for spending the time with both myself and Walshy tonight. And for those people that are watching, if you've loved what we've done, please like, share and spread the word with all your cricket mates. Let's keep the spirit of cricket alive. Keep an eye out for next week's episode. We're going to catch up with former Australian Test cricketer and gentle giant Joe Angel. He's going to join us in the the Spot On Hose and Fittings Clubhouse next week. So thanks to you, Gary. Thanks to you, Walshy. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hope you've all enjoyed tonight, and we'll catch you next time live in the clubhouse.
Thanks, Telf. Thanks, Gary. Always a pleasure to have a chat on the program, and lovely to be able to talk to you both. Cheers.
Cheers, Walshy. Pleasure. Hi to everybody in South Australia. Coming down.
We'll see you.